Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening to the full council meeting on Wednesday, the 17th of January. Welcome to those in the gallery as well. Thank you for attending. I would like to welcome Councillor Blake to our group. I can't see. Oh, sorry, you're right behind. Hello. Welcome to the your first full council meeting and the Isle of Wight councillor. I also need to read out our fire drills. So there are no planned fire drills this meeting. The emergency procedures: if you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts cannot be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it is safe to do so by a member of staff. I would like to advise both members of the public and press this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live. Mobile phones should be switched off unless they are being used for the meeting. Please only speak when I ask you to do so and speak clearly into the microphone. I don't have any apologies unless Councillor Millsdale.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Ray Redrup. I have to make sure I always say the Ray now. So Councillor Ray Redrup sends his apologies.
Okay, so we've got apologies from Councillor Redrup. That's the only apologies for this evening. Thank you. I will start by announcing the passing of two former Isle of Wight councillors. We've lost George Brown, and George was a councillor between 2005 and 2013, a local member for Cowes Medina and Cowes North wards. He also served as a deputy leader. And also of Margaret Webster. Margaret served as councillor between 2005 and 2013 as a local member for East Cowes North and East Cowes wards. And her funeral will take place at the Isle of Wight crematorium on Friday, the 9th of February at 1:30 p.m. Would any councillors like to speak on either of these two? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. George Brown came as a bit of a surprise to me, but I would like to say a few words about Margaret. Margaret and I were both elected in 2005, and she was an ardent supporter of her East Cowes community. She cared, this may sound strange, but they were her first priority in anything that she did, more so over her political affiliation and things like that. She really did support and love her community. I've got to say that. George Brown, if I may. That's a surprise to hear that, but George was certainly a character. It's a bit like Marmite. You either took to him or you didn't. But a very good councillor, a good manager. He certainly knew his business and what he did. And I think he used to do our budget as well. And quite often, he would, I know, have tussles with officers over policies and things like that. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that he's gone. Thank you.
Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I shall miss Margaret Webster deeply, and the fun that we had, our very non-political council meetings, and it came as a great shock to everybody there. She'd done more than 25 years service to East Cowes Town Council, and that's an incredible length of time, given that we all have to be elected. And I know that the council are deeply shocked, and our condolences go to her family. But the thing that we try to hang on to is all the happy things that we did as a council and what we achieved together for the people of Isle of Wight.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Councillor Churchman.
I would like to add that Margaret Webster really was a lovely lady, and we were, like Ian, we were elected in 2005 very honest, very straightforward, and a very kindly person. When it comes to George Brown, I must admit, he and I did have our differences on one or two occasions, but I can see Jeff laughing, but he was an extremely intelligent man and worked very hard. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Daw?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick a note on Margaret Webster. She was a huge supporter of Medina Marching Band as the secretary. And of course, she used to walk behind the parade, and you can see how the band have gone from leaps and bounds, representing various carnivals and bits on Armed Forces days. But Platinum Jubilee, they were appearing there, and I know members of the band are going to miss her greatly.
Thank you, everyone. I think it's important to note the service that they give, and we know, the time and effort that's put into this as we do ourselves. So it's nice to be able to comment on the time they served with us. So we'll move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Minutes from full council in November. Has anybody got any? Oh, Councillor Jarman.
If I can refer you to item 51 in the minutes, which is at the top of page 13. This is the question that I raised to the monitoring officer regarding the process for including items onto our agenda, and it is our agenda as a full council. The undertaking that was missed off at the end was that he was going to get back to us, and not only has he not got back to us, but that slight wording at the end of it seems to have been missed off. So we're still none the wiser as to how members of this full council place things on the agenda, or indeed what the process is within our constitution to enable them to do that. So just to note that it should add that it wasn't need to be conducted with councillor, but the undertaking was to get back to the councillor with what the mechanism should be. It's a very small change, but quite important, and has not been done.
Okay, is everybody happy with that? With the show of hands, that those minutes to be correct as they are, with that change that Councillor Jarman has put forward to add in that there is, and to be noted that there's an answer on how councillors can add to the agenda. Councillor Mulster? Just checking, so nobody's got any more comments for that. Are we all happy with the show of affirmation, show of hands, that you of minutes? Thank you. Passed. I'm just going to sign those minutes. On to item 2 on the agenda is the declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Councillor Love?
Thank you, Chair. I am required to absence myself from the chamber for the motion presented by Councillor Lucioni for legal reasons, which are of a nature to myself.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Anyone else like to mention any declarations of interest before we move on? Any items on the agenda? No. Okay, thank you. On to item 3, we've got the public questions. We have no written questions received, but we do have some oral questions from those in the public gallery. So I will go through those in the order they were received. And first of all, I have Oliver Goodwin on behalf of Green Bembridge Harbour. Oliver, would you like to step forward to the microphone? There should be a button to press, and you could read out your question, please. Thank you.
Okay, I believe it's on now. My name's Oliver Goodwin. I'm a member of a group called Green Bembridge Harbour, and my question relates to the motion of Councillor Lilly at 11B on the agenda,
which is to measures to stop sewage being released. A concern is that the planning system is not being used properly to play its part in reducing sewage discharge, particularly via the combined sewage overflows. And when I'm talking about the system not being used, I mean on the Isle of Wight, it's not being used effectively. There's a major residential planning application for 58 houses in Bembridge due to be determined next Tuesday. And despite the applicant's own expert evidence and objectors' expert commissioned evidence quantifying the increase in sewage discharged to the sea from the development via the combined sewage overflow at Bembridge, this is not addressed either in the officer's appropriate assessment done at the request of Natural England because of the effect on the SPA, or in the officer's report to committee. My question then is whether members will agree to add to the motion to commit to reviewing the extent to which the island's planning process should play a part in reducing sewage discharge into the sea, both through the island plan and through the determination of planning applications. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Should I go to Councillor Fuller, maybe? Or do I need to speak to Councillor Lilly as to whether he would be prepared to add that to the motion? Not sure who would like to answer on that first? Councillor
It should be Councillor.
Councillor Fuller. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Fuller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goodwin, for the question. I think it is very relevant, and certainly in the last 12 months, we're seeing quite a lot of people saying it's very similar to yours, to what you're saying about sewage outfalls and how we control the sewers going into our waterways. I think it is an important issue, and one of the things that I know that the island planning strategy has done is put in more policies to actually try to protect our waterways. It probably doesn't go far enough, but we also need legislation to be able to do that as well. I'm quite happy after what I've said to ensure that there is a response in writing, because I think that it's only right and proper that Mr. Goodwin gets a full response concerning his question that I had no notice of earlier on. But we are doing what we can. We have a new policy, I think it's INF1 within the island planning strategy that will be considered in a few months' time, that I hope will incorporate some of the concerns that residents have concerning the infrastructure, which was created a long time ago and needs to be upgraded. But thank you very much, Mr. Goodwin, for your question. And I will add that a response will be given to Mr. Goodwin from the officers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Lilly.
I mean, thank you for the question. Thank you for highlighting that. In fact, in my motion, there is a line which says for horizontal integration of sustainable urban drainage to be placed on all ongoing development across the Isle of Wight. So I actually, and definitely in there's discussions with Surfers Against Sewage that we worked with on this motion, that did very much include planning within that, because developments obviously go through planning. So I actually do feel that it's actually covered. But I mean, I think if this motion is passed in discussion with all the stakeholders, we would highlight that, because actually it's a very important part of it. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Mr. Goodwin, is that acceptable to you, that it is included in the motion that planning process is looked at as part of it? Not sufficiently. I don't know how much more weight we can put on it at this stage. Councillor Fuller.
I'm very happy to have a written response to Mr. Goodwin, and if Mr. Goodwin is not satisfied with that response, I'm very happy to meet with him separately after that letter is received. But again, it is the planning officers that are trying to implement our policies to make sure they're they're up to date for the 2020s rather than 10, 15 years ago when this kind of issue, although it was a problem, it didn't have the right focus from the wider community. So yes, I'm quite happy to make that offer following a response from a written response to Mr. Goodwin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. So, Mr. Goodwin, I think if we could go forward with you writing to Councillor Fuller and then perhaps a meet-up if you need to look at that, the planning processes in further detail. Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
I'm happy to amend the wording, which in the sentence, which is for horizontal integration of sustainable earning.
Sorry, Chair, can we hold this to the debate? Because it's taking up members' questions. It's turning into a debate now with Councillor Lilly responding. Is that okay? Thank you.
No problem. You've taken those notes on board. Thank you, Councillor Lilly. The second question is from Shani Courtney. Would you like to step up to the microphone? Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, Council. Thank you very much for the space to ask the question. My name's Shani Courtney. I'm the Surfers Against Sewage Regional Rep for the Isle of Wight. My question is, to ensure that the Council is leading, how are you going to manage stormwaters off of your own estates? So your buildings, your car parks, your road spaces that you might own, to stop the stormwater going in and then stop the sewage discharges? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who would like to take that question on? Councillor Jordan?
Thank you, Shawnee. I have that as a written question. I'll give you a written reply. That said, just briefly, I notice Keith is here this evening. We have agreed an MOU with Southern Water, with the Isle of Wight Council. It's in draft form. We hope to bring that through to a final document that we can both sign, which will enable and facilitate the work on our by Southern Water on the estate of this council, on their buildings and mainly on their roads and highways. And indeed, we are trying to enable some SUDS, sustainable drainage schemes, in both Newport and Ryde. And I am aware of, I think from memory, about 30 smaller schemes in Gurnard or Cowes Gurnard, I think, Paul, which we will enable Southern Water to put in more sustainable draining. So what we're doing is working with Southern Water through a memorandum of understanding to address some of these concerns of surface water. There's more to do, and we'll give you a written reply on some of our buildings, because I think that the roof runoff and runoff from hard surfacing needs to be spoken about probably more with Southern Water. But we'll give you a written reply anyway. Hope that's helpful, Sean.
Yes, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any supplementary questions? No. The third question is from Councillor Michael Smith from Newport Community Council. Michael, thank you.
Good evening, Chair. The question is, does the Wight Council spoken to the manager of citizens advice to see if they can actually fix a broken citizens advice, as it's not working at the moment?
I believe it was a question about citizens advice, that it's not responding to queries as perhaps it should be. So Councillor Stevens, do you want to answer that one?
Just like to come in on this because I've been approached by Councillor Brodie with regards to the very same concerns, and over the next week we will be delving into the various commitments from CAB and indeed our contract level agreement responses. I believe that during the COVID lockdown, etc., CAB moved to more telephone answering service and directing people in that respect. I feel that we need to look into seeing if we've still got the amount of cover we need, and it seems to me that it seems to be lacking slightly from the concerns that have already been expressed. I think we should, over the next week or so, delve into that, iron it out, and I think that Councillor Brodie and myself will be working on that, indeed with council officers and hopefully CAB. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay, Michael? The councillor?
Yeah, can I just quickly say that professionals in Newport, like doctor surgeries, are actually sending people to band together, not COB now, because it does say it's no staff. And then yes, I found out there's no case workers. So I just thought I'd let you know.
Councillor Stevens?
Councillor Brodie and myself are meeting at Pan together on Tuesday afternoon next week.
Thank you. It's good to know that you're looking into that. Councillor Brodie?
I just better declare that I'm a trustee of Pan together. Thank you.
Thank you for the public questions. That brings us to the end of those. And thank you all those for attending, and hope you continue to attend the meeting, and thank you. On to item 4. It's my chairman's announcements. So it's just a quick roundup of what I've been doing as chairman and as civic function of the council. And just to say, just before this, we had a period of reflection, and we had the Reverend Steve Sutcliffe from the Minster came in, and he says that the works for that are on just about on schedule, and it will be open again this year, which will be really nice to have that focal point in Newport back to be able to be used again. So it was great to have an update on the renovations there. I continue to attend the citizenship ceremonies at Sea Close offices and in County Hall. And the Coburg Freedom Tree exhibition during December at Osborne House was a great success, and the Freedom Tree is a modern version of a Christmas tree and promotes peace and unity. I attended the launch of the installation of the tree, and the Isle of Wight Council has a miniature version of this tree, which is on display in the Guildhall Museum. And last month, myself and the other councillors travelled to Coburg to complete the return civic visit to celebrate 40 years of our twinning agreements. We were taken on tours of their offices and town centre, the Royal Palace, museums, and they had a lovely display about the Isle of Wight. So it was really good to see that it being promoted to others. And I think those in Germany are quite interested in our history, and that the Prince Albert came over here and was so important in our Isle of Wight, really, with Osborne. And so it was really wonderful to see that history that we share together, and the links of that union between Prince Albert and Queen Victoria, and that they continue to this day, and that we can continue to promote that. I have done a little book of photos from the year from the travels, so that will be in the chairman's room. So you can see that they travelled over here, and then we went back there, and we've kept that twinning relationship going. So it was a pleasure to attend the opening of the Cowes Police Station last week with several other councillors. This is a useful service for the residents, and it is good to see these offices in the town centre where people can access them. So that was a useful addition to that area. And then last night I was present for a ceremony for the installation of a new vicar for Chale, Knighton, Whitwell and St Lawrence churches. They've waited 3 years for this position to be filled, and it is wonderful to welcome the Reverend Rob Marsh into the community. So that's a quick roundup of what I've been doing. Thank you very much. And we will move on to the leaders update on item 5. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. My report's there. I'm not going to take up all of the 5 minutes, or hardly any of it, in fact, because it will allow you more time for questions. But I can't let this moment pass, and bear with me for a moment or two, to take this opportunity to thank Hampshire and our partnership with them over the last 10 years, since 2013. It's a partnership that has been successful. It's coming to an end, and we are moving in a different direction. And indeed, on the 1st of February, we have our own Director of Children's Services starting work with us. And the service, children's services and education will be run once again almost entirely from the Isle of Wight Council in-house. But I just, in passing, in those 10 years, I'd just like to remind us all of some of the things that have happened with their partnership with us. And they introduced, for example, along with staff at the Isle of Wight Council, the primary behaviour service, very successful service. They introduced the first Island Education Award scheme, which celebrated teachers and school staff that went above and beyond the call of their duties and responsibilities. And they brought into existence here the Children in Care Awards ceremony. They also introduced the Safety Valve programme, which is a programme mitigating high need budget pressures for this council. All those successful initiatives that they helped bring forward over the 10 years. Most importantly, of course, during those 10 years, they helped maintain our good Ofsted rating for children's service. So I can't let it pass without thanking them for that. They've been thanked formally, and we've had meetings to do so, but this full council should be aware that we are thanking them for that, and we move on in a good place that they've left us. There we are. You have my report. I'm happy to take any questions on it. If I can answer them, I will. If not, I'll give you a written report. Thank you. A written response, sorry.
I'll start with Councillor Stewart, please.
Then I'll try and keep it reasonably short. At the end of the report, you mentioned the Bond Church landslide, and I was really pleased to see all of the work and see from inside, talking to officers about how much effort went into it. Obviously, that's a major issue for Ventnor, including the loss of one of the roads in, which left one road there. If I can draw the leader's attention to what's been said in previous meetings, and what we brought forward at the meeting of my committee about the military road. The military road is one of 3 roads across the west of the island. During the storms, 2 of the other roads were basically blocked off for a period of time. The military road was the only one which went across to there. And I'm not seeing or hearing anything that shows that the military road is being treated as the critical link it is. So the first thing is I'd just like, or primarily I'd like the council leader to confirm that the council considers that it is a vital strategic transport link.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I'm happy to do that. Very important road, iconic road, important to this island, important to tourism, important to the communities that it serves, and the communities between Charl and Ventnor and Blackgang and West Wight. We do know that it's problematic. We do know that it's difficult to solve. You do know that there are contractual obligations to deal with the problem as it is. But we are working on potential solutions. Those potential solutions require funding of a substantial nature. And to this point in time, we have not been successful in encouraging government via the Department of Transport to assist us in any of that funding. So we are having to find ways to protect the road without the level of funding that we may potentially need. We have spoken to landowners. We know that acquiring land for an alternative road is a possibility. Those discussions are continuing, and we continue to discuss with the contractor potential solutions that it has to bring forward. So we are trying to deal with a very difficult situation, difficult brought on by some of the worst weather that we've seen for many years. Some of that weather caused some of the extensive flooding that we've seen. And encourage the landslips that we've seen at Bonchurch and elsewhere. So this is a vital road, important road, and we are doing all we can, and Councillor Stewart will be involved in those discussions coming forward to try and find a perfect solution to prevent that road ending up in the sea, which is where it's headed if we don't find a solution. I hope that's helpful, Councillor Stewart.
Yes, it is, and thank you very much.
On to Councillor Quigley.
I too would like to thank Hampshire Children's Services as Chair of Children's Scrutiny for the assistance they've given me their last few years, but also their last meeting was particularly candid and open, which is was a good thing. The town bid for Ryde, leader, is great news for Ryde, not so much great news for the rest of the island that's desperate for cash. But I noticed the time frame looks quite punitive and almost like we're being set up to fail. Do you feel assured that you can set up the framework required in time to use the money? And is there an opportunity to use any of that money for affordable housing owned by Ryde Town Council?
Thank you, Councillor Quigley. Absolutely certain we can spend that money and spend and find. We have a list of projects in Ryde, substantial projects. We have them for a long while. They're incorporated in the corporate plan and the place plan that exists for Ryde Town Council. Some of those projects are extensive. One is the town hall. Probably well known to many people here, iconic building in Ryde, iconic for the island perhaps. And there are other projects such as Vectis Hall and other plans, because the funding is to deliver other outcomes as well as economic outcomes. It's to deal with heritage assets, and it's to deal with safety in our community. So we'll be looking at things, for example, as CCTV around the town. I'm not aware, unfortunately, although I would like to say otherwise, that affordable homes are part of the criteria of funding. If they are, and we will look at that very carefully, I would be assured that we would look at schemes to deliver that. It's important that we deliver affordable homes. We're trying to do it. We have some ideas for this council across the island. For Ryde, it's also important. And if we're able to do that, we'll certainly look at those schemes. But the £2 million a year can be rolled over. That's encouraging. And I think at the beginning it might be tough to spend £2 million, but there are schemes there of multi-million pound. We have to get match funding. That's part of the criteria. But a project such as the town hall might be £5 to £7 million alone, one project. So very, very confident we can spend the money. I'm sorry, some of you are in towns and parishes. What's the matter, John? Yeah, that's part funded. Absolutely. Yeah, match funding. Yeah, it's exactly what the funding's for, to invest in heritage. Well, shake your head. It's your government of your party that gave us the money.
From the original question that Councillor Quigley put forward.
That gave us the money, Councillor Robertson, and told us to spend it on our heritage buildings, which is what we'll be doing. Well, shake your head. Have a look at the guidance. Thank you.
Councillor Quigley, is that response appropriate? Thank you. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the planned investment in green transport links between Ryde and Yarmouth, and sincerely hope that full attention be paid to Ventnor and St Lawrence, that once had 7 transport links has now regressed to only 2 B-class roads, and by the end of this month to be down to 1 again. Actually, whilst having attention with the recent closure of the A3055 at Smugglers Haven, yet another critical blow has been dealt to the area, with increased pressure on business that are now crippled as close to breaking point as possible. The decline is monumental, especially coming off the back of COVID and large-scale planned works within the town. What emergency measures are the Cabinet looking to implement to ensure jobs are not lost in the area when businesses will inevitably be forced to close through no fault of their own? I'd like to suggest things like free parking in the council's car parks as an immediate response.
I'll have a go. The reason I spoke is it's not on my report and therefore shouldn't be a question, but I don't want to be harsh, and the councillor is new, and I will endeavour to help to help him along on his journey from here, and welcome. Uh, in terms of free parking, well, of course, Ventnor Town Council own, I think it's 4 of the car parks in Ventnor, and my understanding is that they haven't increased the charges. I think they're still £1 an hour. I think. Forgive me if I'm not absolutely up to date on that, but £1 an hour. They haven't increased their charges since they were transferred. Oh, it must have been 8 years ago, I think, about 2015, something like that. So some of the car parks are at the behest and responsibility of Ventnor to deal with whether they'd like to offer free parking in their car parks. However, of course, you might understand that if the Isle of Wight Council were to make their car parking free, what might happen to Ventnor's car park income and people parking? I would guess that if you have 2 car parks in a town, one's free and one's charged, you might head for the one that's free. So there has to be a scheme across all of this to make this work. I can't add much more than that. We are not looking at producing free parking in Ventnor. We offered 1 hour's free during some of the road closure, which we felt was helpful to the businesses there. I hope it was. In general terms, free parking. Newport have tried free parking for an hour. They had to pay for it. The community council subsidised the loss of income to the council, some 60, 70 or 80,000 pound a year, or it might even be 6 months. Yeah, half a year. And so we would be open to talking to Ventnor Town Council about schemes such as that if they're interested. But you've got to work out their car parking with our car parking. I hope that's helpful, and I hope that's gentle enough, Councillor, for your first meeting here, and welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Brading.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is quite short. I'd like to thank Councillor Jordan actually for raising the issue of Hampshire. I know what a fantastic job they've done on the island over many years. And whilst it's sad the partnership's ending, obviously it may open new opportunities. My simple question is, I know there's talk about buying back part services from Hampshire. I've just spent the last 2 days with the local learning partner for my local school doing head teacher interviews. And one of the questions was asked of the local learning partner, you know, what happens to you after the 1st of January? 1st of February, 1st of January. And there was talk about a partnership agreement or buying back service agreement being agreed before the partnership ended. Can I have your confirmation that that will be in place before the 31st of January, please?
Thank you, Councillor Brading. Very quickly and succinctly, yes, we can confirm that, and happy to confirm that for you. Please convey that back. Thank you.
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Leader. In your report, you actually talk about public health. At the moment, we have a contract partnership with Hampshire. That is going to come to an end at the end of 2025. Is there a plan in the next financial year to review the public health service, and would the relevant committees be involved in that review? Thank you.
Yes and yes, Councillor Lilly. We certainly, as good practice, will review that partnership before it comes to an end next year to see if we wish to continue. And of course, that would come through the relevant committee, which would be it's your committee currently, isn't it? Health and Social Care Committee. Absolutely.
Policy and Scrutiny Health and Social Care Committee.
Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the Hampshire partnership, which you did report in right at the start of your report, Councillor Jordan. I was here, as were you, at the start of that partnership back in 2013, after the previous council had entirely failed children's services, both in terms of education and safeguarding. There is no doubt that safeguarding has improved dramatically in the period since 2013. But I'm not so confident about educational standards on the Isle of Wight. One of the local media outlets reported over the last couple of weeks the performance of primary school children in the past year, and our GCSE results don't always look that tremendous. Are you confident, as leader of this council, that our children are in a better place in 2023-24 than they were back in 2012-2013? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. I'm confident we've made some progress and some improvements. What I'm more confident about is the new Director of Children's Services coming on board, and this council, this authority and this island managing our children's services from here. I'm very confident that is going to provide and produce in ongoing improvements to our children's services and to education. So, Councillor Brodie, yeah, I'm confident, absolutely.
Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. My question refers to the flooding incidents. In the report, it says flooding households affected areas can apply for £500 to get, and I've circled quick, to get cash quickly to help with immediate costs. Quickly now is 2 months on and still a lot of people haven't received any support. Can you give me an indication about where that is?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question, forgive me. My understanding is, yes, there has been some delay. There has been some misunderstanding, also my understanding of some of the criteria to achieve, to obtain the grants for the flooding, but that we are working on the number of applications that we have and trying to clear those as quickly as we can, Councillor Love.
Thank you. Sorry to those that we didn't get round to. Maybe you could ask your question at the end and the members' question time. So that brings us on to item 6, the update from the Future Governance Working Group. I believe we've had an update from Councillor Brodie, who's going to talk about how we can go forward with this positively. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just remind full council that back in July, we agreed unanimously to consider a move to a committee system of governance on this council rather than a cabinet one. Subsequent to that, a future governance working party was established cross-party that I was elected to chair. It gave due consideration to all the issues before us between September and November of last year. And I'd like to thank all the members of that group committed towards it. It also had the oversight of the Audit and Governance Committee chaired by Councillor Garrett, who was also a member of the working group. A final brief report, deliberately brief report, outlining a framework for the future, was then agreed unanimously by the working group in late November and passed to the monitoring officer on the 30th of November last year. The monitoring officer was also invited by myself and Councillor Garrett to have further discussions on the next details phase of change. Nothing was received until mid-December, when members of the working group and leaders of the various political groups received an 18-page briefing that effectively presented obstacles to progress. Consequently, you yourself, the chair, were advised by the monitoring officer to pull that report from tonight's agenda. As in the view of the monitoring officer, if it had been agreed without certain details being dealt with, he would have to issue what's called a Section 5 notice. I'm not a lawyer. Some of you may know what that is, but it's quite bad news. This caused much disquiet, as there is very clearly a democratic groundswell of support for change to a committee system on this council. Therefore, after a meeting yesterday involving all the group leaders, all their representatives, it was agreed that I should report to full council tonight that full council is asked to note that the Future Governance Working Group has published its framework recommendations to the Audit and Governance Committee of the 11th of December last year, and that these recommendations have been circulated to all members, and this takes forward the motion unanimously agreed by July's full council. The intention of these recommendations is to bring to a future full council meeting by the 1st of May at the latest, a report recommending a politically proportionate committee system, which could be implemented from its annual meeting on the 15th of May 2024 this year. The working group has provided a framework which includes a non-exhaustive outline of rule changes and other matters which need further consideration. The next stage is for the politically proportionate Future Governance Working Group to work with the monitoring officer and other relevant senior officers to agree proposals for constitutional change to enable this transition. There will be a progress report to March's full council this year, which will confirm the timetable for a report to a future full council that would provide a statutory section 9KC2 compliant motion. That's something to satisfy the monitoring officer, and any appropriate public consultation. So that's the update. I hope that the council will accept that that's the way we're progressing now, and accept that as an update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. That sounds like it's a positive move forward for the future governance of the council and looking at the different options. Would anyone else like to speak on that item? Councillor Jarman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I understand a decision was given yesterday on this, and we're very pleased with that. I also understand an undertaking was given by the Chief Executive to ensure that whatever resources were required to ensure that this process is concluded and that those dates are met will be made available. And I wonder if I could just have that assurance recommitted today, please.
Yes, the Chief Exec is happy to confirm that those resources will be made available.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on this item? No? Okay, that concludes that item. I thank Councillor Brodie for that update, and we look forward to how that progresses. That brings us on to item 7, report of the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chairman. That's the local council tax support scheme 2024 to 2025. Annually, we have to consult and review the local council tax support scheme that was brought in. Well, I'll read the executive summary because I know some people online haven't got it. I don't intend to go through the full consultation. It's embedded within the document. So as I say, I shall praise what I need to do, and if people wish to bring things out from the paper, I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy with that. But each year the council is required to review its council tax support scheme, CTS, in accordance with the requirements of the Schedule 1A of the Local Government Finance Act of 1992, and to either maintain the scheme or replace it. Council tax support was introduced from the 1st of April 2013, when it replaced the central government funded council tax benefit regime. From its inception, the funding available to the council from government has been reduced year on year. So each year, the central government has reduced the money they give to us to assist with this scheme. What I would say is that with background to the consultation, we undertook a full consultation for an 8-week period during August through to October to seek views of residents on the local council tax scheme, support scheme. And what I would say is we didn't just go out to individuals, we went out to organisations as well and town and parish councils. We did this in a variety of ways, online consultation, and indeed sent out 10,000 postcards during that period, and received feedback from that. The full details of the consultation are available in the report. And I'd like to say promote the consultation, encourage the engagement. We send out to the existing local council tax support beneficiaries, if you like, those claimants, and asking them to have their say as they are directly affected by any charges made to the scheme. Other organisations were also alerted, as I mentioned earlier. That included also the Police and Crime Commissioners, officers, and the Fire Authority as well as I said, the Town and Parish Council, but also other organisations that support our residents across the island. What I want to touch on is we acknowledged about that 201 responses received. Actually were in the majority, 201 from the consultation wanted to see the financial support increased. Now, we're going through a situation at this moment in time, as you know. We did have a £2 million deficit that's risen to 3, and we're still searching for funding to fill that black hole, shall we say. So on voting with this later, and I'll bring forward the recommendation, but on voting, please bear in mind that we do have a council tax support hardship fund, and note that on page 21, paragraph 16, and I'll read that. A council tax support exceptional hardship fund was introduced during 2016 to 17 to recognise the potential impacts to some low-income households that might be faced with genuine hardship as a result of the local council tax support scheme 2016 to 17. Scheme changes agreed by full council on the 20th of January 2016. This provision was reviewed again by full council on the 22nd of February 2023. Continues to provide support for those in genuine hardship. This requires individual applications and takes into account individual circumstances, including the claimant's income and essential outgoings. Up to the recommendation. I know I'm racing against time here, and I trust that people allow me to finish. What I would say is that it's recommended. The recommendation comes through from the officers, etc., and given to us. Don't forget this report goes from page 19 to page 200. It's very good reading, and it gives you a breadth of knowledge with regards to the council tax, the whole machinations, including the eligibility and the criteria therein for council tax.
Councillor Stevens, could you read the recommendation?
I will do now, Chair, but I feel sure that as I move forward with this, you'll understand the rationale behind.
You're well over time now. So
Yeah.
thank
well,
you.
This
I
is
don't, you know,
very-
I don't like
this
to
is-
hurry
this
you
is
up,
very
but
important. If you want to skip this, I'm quite prepared to allow you to, but this is very important. You're going to take a vote on this in a moment. And you really need to avail yourself to the fact.
understood, Councillor Stevens.
Right.
We just want to know
The
the
recommendation
recommendation.
is that full council adopts the proposed scheme and makes no changes to the maximum level of support for working age cases, meaning it remains at 70%, allowing for minor changes to applicable amounts. And that full council continues the current exceptional hardship policy. That is the recommendation.
Thank you. Do we
I
have a
look for a second.
seconder? Yes. Councillor Quigley. Would you like to speak on that, Councillor Quigley?
Yes. Obviously, I'd like to see an increase. I think everybody in the room would. We're sensible, but realistically, that means finding over £300,000 a year from another budget, which, when everybody knows the 94 million we've lost due to government cuts, makes that unsustainable. I will remind that back in September 22, I did bring forward a cost of living motion, which I believe was unanimously supported in the chamber, and we agreed that we'd do as much as we could, and you can go back and revisit that, what we all agreed. I don't think we've been able to do hardly any of it because funding is so tight. What should be a shame to us all is that it's a £10 million a year scheme because there are that many people on the island who need help. And to withdraw it, some people, it would push them over the edge. So we can't lower it, we can't afford it. So the only reason I support keeping it is the same. I couldn't bear the thought, and I would have even more sleepless nights than I do now, of seeing pushed over the edge for the sake of what is a few pence to them, but a lot of money to the council.
Thank you. Councillor Jarman, do you want to speak next?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. First of all, I want to point out an anomaly on page 24, section 30, where it notes that the consultation sought the views on the proposed scheme to keep the scheme the same as it currently is. That's not actually correct. Question 2 of the consultation simply asked, do you agree with the proposed scheme? Proposed scheme, i.e. to have a discretionary programme, to have the calculation basis as it is, was all there, but what was not there in the question, keeping the scheme as it is, that was not there. There was no question put in the consultation, would you like to keep it at 70%? It was simply a question of, do you like the scheme? And yes, most people like the scheme. If you want to keep the scheme as is, would have been a separate question, and that was not asked. That's the first point. The second point is that we've had quite extensive discussions on this, and had we had access to the necessary data, which we've not been provided for as part of our plan to deliver an alternate budget, we would have been proposing to amalgamate a number of different budget components here. In the absence of that, and bearing in mind the policy decision that was declared last year, which was progressively to move back to the target of 100%, which many of the members of this chamber will remember was at one time provided for by this council, and being fully aware of the financial implications involved in this, we do not see that it is fair to the people, having given them that understanding, having asked them in a consultation what they believe is the right thing to do, and the majority going for 75%. We would therefore propose and change to this, this motion that it is changed to reflect a change to 75% going forward. And I would look for a seconder for that motion.
Councillor Robertson.
I'm willing to second that motion.
Sorry, Chair, if I make, you looked away, I was sorry, paused. I would note that a number of, not only the consultees from the public supported that, but also East Cows in their response supported 75%. We noticed the response also from Northwood declaring that it should be a priority. And we noticed that Shanklin also went for the 75%. Of course, others sought to keep it at 70, but just to remind the members who are here this evening of what their local wards declared. I'll stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman. We're now debating the amendment that Councillor Jarman has put on the table. Councillor Moster?
Thank you. I think many of you might have known, not from this council, but previous council, that I was the cabinet member that always sort of went against the flow of what the rest of the cabinet front. I think because I made them laugh half the time that they put up with me actually voting against it. So I think Councillor Price and Councillor and myself voted that we didn't actually, we wanted it to be 75% before, and now I'm leader of the group. Hey, I get to actually say what I want. It's always good to be able to control the narrative, isn't it? So for me, I actually think we can look at this outside the box. Thank you ever so much for the long, the long discussion about what happens in the consultation. But when you look, most of the people asked, they did ask, could it go up to 75%? And I think sometimes we do have to try and think how we can do that. I don't like the exceptional hardship fund. I think you could look quite sensibly and think if you amalgamated the exceptional hardship fund, put that amount of money into the council tax support, when you look at how much dignity is removed from people when they try to fill in those exceptional hardship funds and how much goes back into the budget, actually there isn't a lot of difference if you just get rid of the exceptional hardship fund and put that as part of raising the council tax support. It is degrading to apply for it. It takes you through lots of very difficult questions, and that's why most people don't actually want it. So Councillor Jarman, yes, we completely support you. There are ways of getting the money and it should be done, and we should actually listen to the consultation, not how many people have actually bothered to reply. Thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. This is an issue that on which I have spoken every year since I've been on this council, and I'm reminded of a move I made. I believe it was in late 2019, which was to restore this to 75%. I'm grateful to Councillor Jarman for giving slightly late notice that he was going to bring this amendment forward. It challenges me because my head says, where do we get the money? My heart says, how do we support people who are in the greatest of hardships? So whilst I'm sure to some extent the administration's thinking might be prefiguring on where it would spend monies it could raise by placing a premium on empty home owners. I did note the report that from this time last year said that that could raise £575,000 if it were implemented at 100%. Whilst not prefiguring whatever that decision might be, and I'm not privy to any thinking that the administration might have if it were to place that sum at 100%. I note that it exceeds £366,000. The money is available, unless it has already been somehow allocated or based on a decision yet to be made. That's a difficult one, but at the time when I spoke in favour of restoring it to 75%, I said I'd work with the then Conservative administration if they were minded to follow me down that track, that I would seek to help find the savings necessary that would be palatable to do that. I am going both with my heart and my head. My head says it is doable, it is difficult, but it is the right thing to do. I shall support the amendment.
Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Garrett, for his comments there, because I too struggle with this particular issue, given that my residents would like to see this being 75%. But the real questions are about finances at this particular time and where we currently are, not forgetting that if we were to move to a different administration, that the cost of that could be anything about £500,000 plus. So we're talking about lots and lots of money, which isn't in the system at this time. And 75%, I would like to see that, but I don't think that has been fully explained about where that money is coming from at this time to pay for it. And I'd like to know a bit more about where that money is coming from. You said there's some money slopping about in the system. I'd like to know where that money is, please.
I'll take everyone's comments first and then answer the questions. I've got Councillor Brading next.
Thank you, Chairman. I listened to all the comments being made around the room. I listen to Councillor Love's comments, as I always do. No idea where the £500,000 coming from. That's a bit of a misnomer to what we're talking about. But this is a very detailed paper come forward on a very important issue. Having been involved in setting the budget for 4 years, I know that anything agreed by full council has an impact on the budget. I fully get that. The balance, council has to balance his books. Councillor Garrett is very versed on the budget, and if he says the money's there, then I'll take his word on that. But we've got to look at this. This is about people. It's about supporting people at difficult times. My question, actually, for Councillor Stevens is a simple one. The hardship fund. I know from experience when the hardship fund first came in, the take up of funding the hardship fund was quite low. I wonder if you give some updated information on how much is in the hardship fund and how much that is actually used. That would help the decisions, because at the moment I'm minded to support the amended proposal of 75%. But an answer on hardship fund would help that decision. Thank you.
I'd love to be able to give you that straight off the top of my head, but I can't. But I dare say if I asked over to some of our superb support staff, that they could probably give me and indeed yourself, Councillor Brady.
Councillor Stevens, we'll come to that at the end. You'll have your
We'll come to that
right
at
to
the end.
reply at the end. We'll do all the.
Councillor Brady asked the question of me.
He did, and then I think there was quite many questions, so we'll come back to that at the end. I will get everybody's comments first.
Well, give me some direction then, please.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie next.
Thank you, Chair. Trouble with being here a long time is that what goes around comes around. I remember when the erosion of the 100% support started under the previous independent administration, much to protest from myself, which led to the establishment of the Exceptional Hardship Fund, which I have to say over the years, I've always looked into it, is hardly used at all. The sort of community that I represent, the majority of people depend on this sort of assistance from the council, and I do think that we should be making a move to restoring the level up towards the 100%. There is no doubt that finding 300,000 is going to be difficult in any council budget setting process at the moment, and Councillor Garrett has alluded to a possibility, but there is a straightforward amendment that can be made to the recommendation at paragraph 7, which I would like to propose, and it follows on from what Councillor Mosdell said. I would like to support Councillor Jarman's view that it should be returned to 75%, but I would also like us to change the word continues in the second bullet point as it reads, this full council discontinues the Exceptional Hardship Fund. It's hardly used from memory. We may get Councillor Stevens may disabuse me of that. It's unfortunate he doesn't know it off the top of his head. I certainly don't know it off the top of my head, but then I'm not as responsible on this council as Councillor Stevens. But I would like to propose that I'm happy with Councillor Jarman increasing it to 75%, but I think we should find a way of funding it. And I think the way to do that is to discontinue the Exceptional Hardship Policy. I propose that as an amendment, and perhaps Councillor Mosdell would second it.
Councillor Jarman, would you be happy with that amendment to your proposal?
Yes, Chair, thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Brodie for his suggestion. This reflects the entry that I gave to this introduction, where we were proposing to amalgamate the two, and effectively by removing the second bullet point or calling it discontinue doesn't really matter. I think discontinue makes it very clear what we're doing, and that does in effect amalgamate the two pools of money available within that 75%. I think that's a good way of putting it, and I would be very happy to allow that change to my motion.
Councillor Jordan.
I just like an amalgamation is not the same as cutting. Let's use the same language. If you cut, and I absolutely accept what Councillor Brody says, that's not amalgamate. That's different. Absolutely different.
Robertson, would you be happy with that updated amendment to the motion?
Yes, very happy.
So we are speaking on the amended amendment now. I'm wondering if we could just have that clearly read out so that we know the exact words that was again, please.
The proposal is to change the recommendation to that full council adopts the proposed scheme and changes, the second part of it, maximum level support for working age cases, but changes the 70%, meaning that it changes to 75%, allowing for minor changes to applicable amounts. That all stays the same. And then in the second bullet point, the only issue there is, as Councillor Brodie alluded to, before the word continues, the fourth word on that sentence, it becomes discontinues.
Okay, I will continue to get comments from those on that amended amendment. Thank you for that confirmation, Councillor Jarman. I'm going to Councillor Stewart next, please.
Thank you very much. I knew about this motion very shortly before this meeting. I was very pleased to see something like this come forward. Did not expect it from various people. So to see this is quite welcome. We considered it, and in 10 minutes, I think we probably came out with 3 possibilities how this could be funded. 75% from my point of view will decrease the amount of unpaid tax because there'll be a number of people who can't afford the current 30% anyway. A discontinuance of the hardship fund will also bring in further monies. My colleague, Councillor Garrett, has already come up with a sensible approach, and I'm sure, knowing the administration, because they work very hard on this, that they will be able to manage the figures appropriately. I would suggest strongly that we support this for the poorest people, for the people who need the most support on our island.
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Love.
Thank you. I'd just like to just get a little bit of clarity, if that's okay. So if we were to follow the amendment, what happens to those people who actually need the hardship fund? What is the contingency for those people who do use the fund at this time? I need to know the answer to that, because those people who might need that, there still needs to be some fund there or an appropriate system for them to access. I want to be clear about that, because otherwise we leave people who are right at the very end of their absolutely nowhere. And I'm not willing to vote for it unless I know that those people are cared for in some way. What is the contingency there?
Councillor Lever.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Love has just asked the question I was about to ask was essentially, if we're going to discontinue it, how is that replaced for those people? Just some clarity on that. I'd also like, before we vote on anything, clarity on the costs to increase it to 75%, just so we're aware of those 2 aspects.
Councillor Quigley, did you want to come back on that before I go to Councillor Stevens for his right to reply? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like Councillor Brodie, I would happily support 100% reduction, and I would love to support 75%, but we're talking blind here. I'm a bit surprised the discussion we're having around figures. We've had less emotions about much lesser amounts of money that have been referred back to cabinet because we're not over the money. And I think as a responsible council, I don't understand. This seems a bit more posturing than anything else. But, you know, the difference between 70 and 75% is about £6 a month to the average resident, which that will make a difference to some people. And it pains me to say, because that is horrendous that will make a difference to some people. But until we know what discontinuing the hardship fund amount is, and that covers the 344,000, I think what we're doing is not more than playground chitter chatter, to be fair. You know, and I will happily support 75% if it's affordable. I mean, I don't understand why anyone wouldn't.
Jones Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Listen to this with interest, and of course, we would love to go back to the days where we had 100% council tax support, but with those days are not with us at the moment. At scrutiny, corporate scrutiny last week, we had a paper from our finance officer where it pointed out very clearly that we've had the second lowest settlement in the country from government. So we're not in a good place. We've actually had less. We've had about £400,000 less money than we thought we were going to. We weren't particularly very hopeful about that. And of course, this is setting aside the island deal, which you know, we still haven't heard about. So I think we should understand the situation we're in, the truth of the situation we're in. So if we were to increase to 75%, which, you know, would be great, we're talking about another 340,000-ish £1,000 that we'd have to find. And I understand the value of the hardship fund is £45,000. That doesn't really, something like that, isn't it? Yeah. So it's it doesn't, that doesn't balance it out. And I do agree with others who have just spoken that the hardship fund is there and is used. Okay, it may be very difficult for people to access, but I think it is necessary to have that backstop. Our real problem is our lack of funding from government. That can't we just focus on what the real problem is and stop this kind of what we'd like to do in you know, in this kind of like bit of posturing as well going on. But we need to look at the facts that are before us. And you know, if this is a proposal that's come forward, I would like to know where that £330,000 is coming from. So £366,000 is coming from, because that's quite a lot of money.
Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. This just shows that actually all councillors should be privy to up-to-date financial information, because the last time I looked at it, the hardship fund was 250,000. I think Councillor Brodie's nodding his head, most of this side are nodding their head, that the hardship fund was 250,000. I don't remember many people's names, but I remember money. So I would, if I had been showed to me that it had gone to what we're saying at the moment is 45,000, then yeah, so from that side, it's saying it's 45,000. When I last looked at the figures, it was 250,000 for the hardship fund. It was hardly ever used. It was really quite degrading to use it. My suggestion would be, rather than a sit here all evening discussing it, it is quite clear that most of the chamber would like this to increase to 75,000. It is quite clear that we need the right financial information to make this decision. My suggestion is that it goes back to cabinet with the direction of this full council to say, please can you rework this, look at the hardship fund, get the financial data back to us so we can make a decision where this money can come from. Because last time I looked, that hardship fund was 250,000. And as a councillor, I should have the right to have the same access to the financial data as every other councillor, whether I am on cabinet, I'm Alliance, whatever I am, I should have that information. So my suggestion is it moves back to cabinet, they have that discussion and see how full council can have this brought back looking at 75%. Please, that is my suggestion.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. It makes rather uncomfortable viewing listening to councillors who talk at great length about those who are struggling the hardest on the island, and rightly they do, straining for excuses not to support this. We hear the council doesn't have 300,000. Of course the council has 300,000. And it's Councillor Stevens' job, if this full council decides he should go and find that money, to go and find that money. We hear Councillor Love saying we might want to spend 500,000 on changing the governance system of this council. It's an appalling way for councillors to be carrying on, knowing there are people out there who need support. This council has just spent 1.3 million on replacing its lighting and windows and heating. And there are councillors here trying to blame the government or saying we can't afford it. We can afford it. Let's vote for it. Let's all vote for it and stop the posturing. Use your vote. Thank you.
Councillor Daw next.
Can we just go with what Councillor Mosdell suggested and end this? Because, you know, I bumped Carl's motion a couple of months ago. It required some working with some figures. I was only asking a couple of grand for Armed Forces Day, but oh, shit the bed. This is a massive financial decision. I would have loved to have seen this amendment prior to this, Councillor Jarman. That would have been very, very helpful. I can't support a vote on that. We've been surprised. Let's support Councillor Mosdell, get it back to Cabinet, get it worked up and get it back on the table. Thank you all.
I think I've got Councillor Redrop next. You're all queuing up there.
Thank you, Chair. When we do get more detail on this, can we have a breakdown of what the monthly impact will be on 4 people? Because if we are, I can see that. I mean, I think I would like a little bit more examples, and then we can compare that to what the cost will be. I just sort of had a look through, and like you said, around £6. But some more detail on that will help us ground this discussion on what we're talking about. When it comes to percentages, 75% sounds great, but what does it actually mean? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett.
I was just going to say that I think Councillor Mosdale may be suggesting something really rather sensible. This is a very big decision. I know, after 6 years, Claire, after 6 years. After 6 years, but seriously, yes, it is sensible. I think there is a mood in this chamber to make that move. I do believe it is possible to achieve that in ways that Councillor Stewart and myself has outlined. It is not beyond the wit of this council to be able to make use of things like special full councils if necessary to do stuff. So if there's a mood within this chamber to move to 75%, if all the figures stack up, then let us defer that to a special full council, timed such that it still allows the budget process to go ahead. I believe the budget itself is taking place quite late in February, so that whilst there's no luxury of time, there is time, I believe, to do that. So if this council is minded to defer this for additional information, special full council or some other mechanism, then I would go with that. But I'm still minded to go to 75%. Otherwise.
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you. Again, I'm quite amazed that I have to support what Councillor Mosdell has said, which is well, there you are. See, you've said something that's obviously what I'm responding to. I have also, over the years, since I've been a councillor, voted strongly. In fact, I remember with Councillor Mosdell and Councillor Price in regarding this, and my passion and talking about poverty on the island, I could not support it being increased. What I do feel, and I think it's what people have said, and that's why I support what Councillor Mosdell has said, is that we shouldn't be hijacked at a meeting and not given the exact information. We need to know about the detail of the hardship fund. We need to know whether, if that is taken away, what would be the risks involved. We need a proper assessment of that and how we would make sure that people come, because we are responding to the increasing numbers of people that are actually poor on this island. You know, I visited a food bank this week, and the numbers are doubling within that. In fact, one of my questions about this is to the leader in the member's question. So actually, if we can give a message to our population that we are listening and caring, then we do. But we've got to actually know where the money is coming from. And I feel very uncomfortable, and I've always felt uncomfortable, that we make the decision of this before we have all the figures of the budget. It is totally out of sync. We should be actually looking at both at the same time. So I actually support what Councillor Garrett has put forward, is that we, and Councillor Mosdale, that we actually do take this away, take the feelings of this meeting away, and actually come back with a special meeting to finalise this.
Councillor Downer.
Thank you, Chair. Don't usually say very much. Agree with Councillor Mosdale and all the other comments, and that's enough from me. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Outlaw as well, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm a bit surprised that some of the councillors are confused about the implications of this amendment, because this administration's brought this paper to the council and it says in it the implications of reducing this by 5% to 65 is 366,000, and increasing it is 366,000. They should have anticipated that there could have been somebody who put in an amendment to say this would be 75%, and it's up to the cabinet member responsible for finance to be prepared for that and to have some answers. So I really don't understand why we're saying, oh, we don't know, because it's in the paper. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
Thanks, Chair. And on the back of that, can I remind councillors, Corporate Scrutiny Committee asked the administration to present budget proposals, any details it wanted to share with its cross-party scrutiny committee in December and January, back-to-back agendas. Not only did it fail to share anything, the cabinet member responsible didn't even attend the meeting. So we have tried to deal with this through the proper channels to get more information about what is on the line.
Just a moment, because you're referring to my personal position there.
So I'll come to that.
Yeah, well,
I'll answer that for you.
I'm not having this. I'm not having an
No
accusation.
substitute.
I'm not having an accusation about my personal life brought up in the council chamber.
The
Thank you.
cabinet member was not able to attend at the last minute, so there was
no spokesperson there for the administration. Nobody presented budget proposals of any kind, and no one was there to field questions on the budget. That's why we keep having to deal with this in the arena of full council, and we'll be doing it again at the end of February. It is entirely the administration's fault for not sharing details to allow us to deal with this outside the chamber, so we're agreed inside the chamber. I suspect we all want 75%, but we're not going to decide it today.
Councillor Mosdale.
So before everybody gets, can I just make it clear? I went on to scrutiny recently, and I know when I was in cabinet, we were told as a cabinet, I know every cabinet can run things exactly the way that they want, but we had 2 meetings a month that we had to go to. We were told we had to go to, and Councillor Stewart expected us, all of us, to go to scrutiny and then to go to cabinet, and that we were to read all the papers on everybody else's stuff. So somebody couldn't attend. You knew enough as a team to be able to answer the other questions. Councillor Stewart, unless there was something terrible happened, always attended scrutiny. He was always there as his position of leader. I was quite shocked when I went to scrutiny and there were hardly any cabinet members there. It makes it very difficult to be an opposition member and ask those questions, those challenging questions, if the cabinet aren't there. And I'm not saying specific members, and I'm not directing it at anybody. I would just make a polite request that as a cabinet, you don't just go to your cabinet meeting, you do the more important meeting, which is the one 2 days before, where you can have that check and challenge on what you are doing. not just going to your cabinet meeting. It's just a polite request. You should all be going, I feel.
Okay, I'd say there was reasons why some of them couldn't attend, but Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. So, you know, the crux of this issue is all about us having access to data. And had we had access to data, we would have been able to provide the recommendation of amalgamation. We would have been able to understand some of the financial implications for that. And yet, consistently over the last few months, we have been denied that access to data. It is in our, and I'll say our, because it's every member of this body, our constitution. And it came up at corporate scrutiny again. Opposition groups are entitled to confidential information and discussions with officers to enable them to formulate alternative budget proposals. Now, there's been debate on that, I think now for some 15 weeks. The bottom line is we, as an opposition group in our constitution, have not been afforded what it says here, confidential information to formulate alternative budget proposals. That detail has been kept from us despite multiple requests. Had we had access to that data, we would have been able to perform a better analysis here. However, I am still convinced that with the measures put forward this evening, with the possible move to 100% additional levy on properties, which was mooted and discussed in some detail, if you remember, at the last budget meeting almost a year ago now, and with the very small amount which is in that discretionary element, I am of the belief that these funds can be found and can be afforded in a future budget. And if I didn't believe that, I would not be making this amendment. So the amendment is there. It has been seconded. I know we've had a lot of discussion about it. My understanding from our constitution is that a motion duly seconded must be voted on. And I think we should go forward accepting what seems to be the overwhelming will of this chamber, that the cabinet is instructed in the budget proposal to include increasing this figure to 75%. There's no ambiguity in that. I think the will is overwhelming within this room to do so. I'm not going to say it's 75% of the chamber or 65% of it, but it's certainly a big enough figure to carry the majority. We should vote on instructing effectively what we're doing here by a motion is we are telling the cabinet in their budget, and in fact any other group in their budget who bring forward a proposal to include the figure of 75% council tax relief. I can't understand why there is any further ambiguity on that.
Councillor Lucioni. Turn your microphone off, Chris, please. Oh, Councillor Lucioni.
What I'm a bit confused about is, has Claire's not been seconded as well? Have we got to do this first and then?
No, we have to deal with the motion on the table, which is Chris has put forward. There's been an amendment to his amendment. And if we vote that down, then it will be Claire's motion put forward to take it to cabinet.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Councillor Brady.
I'd like to apologise to all councillors, actually. About half an hour ago, to help the debate to make my decision, I asked a simple question. And in the last 30 minutes, we've gone from changing motions to taking these off the agenda. And I thought my simple question was helpful, but half an hour later, so I apologise to all councillors for that half an hour delay. I do favour a vote this evening at the moment, but you know, I think I apologise for asking a question I thought was helpful. Clearly, I'm not so sure it was helpful, so apologies.
We cannot curtail debate on the subject. Councillor Brody.
Thank you, Chair. I would just say, Councillor Brading, this is just a manifestation tonight of, you know, I'm bound to say, of the cabinet system when you haven't got a majority. It doesn't work. And it's been like that for the best part of 3 years now. and I can't see it getting any better, to be frank, which is one of the main reasons why I want to see us move to a committee system. Councillor Robertson said cost us £500,000. That's a load of rubbish, frankly. And the 1.2 million on windows, etc., I suspect was actually planned for by former Councillor Hutchison using the Asda capital receipts that I would have liked to have, would have liked to have spent on things like extra care housing for vulnerable adults and for the provision of a children's facility on the island, and a group I chaired back under the last independent council actually proposed that, but former Councillor Hutchison and that administration decided they wanted to spend the money on IT, windows, and I can't remember all the other irrelevant, the toilet, things like that, frankly, that don't really matter. So if you're talking about irrelevance, as Councillor Robertson, you need to talk to somebody who's been around a bit of a while. In terms of process tonight, can I just say, I made a proposal that Councillor Jarman has accepted. I disagree with that now, because I've now decided that I need more information about the exceptional hardship policy. You know, I am quite disappointed that a cabinet member, and I'm sorry, Ian, and it's not personal, that should be in the report, because I remember it being about £250,000. If it's only 45,000 now, I wonder where it's gone. Or maybe my failing memory is just a load of rubbish. I will vote against that amendment. You then have to go. You can't go to tell me if I'm wrong, Justin. You can't go to whatever Councillor Mosdale's proposing, because there's not a motion on notice apart from anything else. And it's a directly contradictory to what the report's saying. You have to vote on the report. If you then reject that, then I don't know where you go. Maybe you'll all agree to accept Councillor Mosdale's motion. You probably shouldn't. I'm sure a monitoring officer somewhere in this country would say that's not at all possible, and I'll issue a section 25A or whatever on you, but it's who knows, but let's get the process right. But I will vote against this amendment now. I will also vote against the report, because I do think we need better quality reports. The problem is we have a cabinet of 8 people from 13 people. They are not the best 8 members of this council. Far from it. Thank you, Chair.
Just taking a moment.
Chair, might you wish to adjourn the meeting just for a short period of discussion?
Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes.
Chairman. If it helps the chamber. Councillor Jarman has an amendment at the moment that was seconded. It's been debated. Throughout that debate, there's been a suggestion that actually the chamber may wish to have this matter referred to cabinet. My advice is that the amendment is dealt with and a vote is taken. If that amendment falls, it is open to either you, Chairman, under your power to refer to cabinet, or a proposal can be put forward. If it's seconded, a vote could be taken on having the matter referred to cabinet, and then that would be the end of the matter for tonight. Before you go to any vote on the amendment, Councillor Stevens has a right to reply at the end of the debate on the amendment, so he should be given the opportunity to reply. If there's no other councillors on your list to speak, and then move to the vote on the amendment.
Okay, is that clear for everybody? I will give Councillor Stevens the right to reply. Then we will go to the vote on the amendment. And then if that falls, then I will refer it to Cabinet through my powers, unless somebody wants to put forward a proposal to do that and vote on that. But otherwise, I can put the substantive motion forward. Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Am I still allowed? I had my hand up before the adjournment to speak on it. Am I?
Didn't have your name on the list, but yes, you may speak.
Is that okay? Because I think it's really important. My concern is not necessarily around the 75%, although I would like to understand better where we could find that money before we vote on it, because it's not an unsubstantial amount of money. My concern now is with the addition to the amendment, which is to discontinue that hardship fund. So one, it feels a little illogical to raise it to then discontinue it. Because then what the people that are using that right now, what are they going to do if we discontinue it? If we've not, I don't mind discontinuing it as long as there's something in place after that point, but we're not suggesting that. So I'm really worried that we discontinue it without something in place to replace it. And so for that reason, I'll be voting against the amendment.
I think that that's the point that's been made by several people, and that is why we are going to potentially refer it to Cabinet, but it will be the decision. This motion is on the table. We have to vote on it. So it will be the decision of the full council to decide whether they go with the motion that is on the table, or they will vote against it, and we will refer it for more information to come back to full council. So Councillor Stevens, you have the right to reply on this before we go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, members, for a deep and full debate. Quite possibly we could have avoided this if we'd spoken outside the chamber and brought something forward in agreement. Once again, it's talking budget on the hoof, and that's not good for our council and our council setting processes. It doesn't inspire confidence in our staff, let alone the residents of this island. We've fallen a little bit short, and okay, let's see what we can do. But one thing I will say is I did go through the staffing levels of this authority prior to bringing the motion forward, and I will read. This is from our section 151 officer. When considering the local council tax support scheme, the council must have due regard to its overall financial position and its duty to set a lawful and balanced budget. At the time of the LCTS consultation, it was expected the council would be required to make 2 million of budget savings for 24-25. Since that time, the council has experienced and will continue to experience unplanned and unfunded, unavoidable cost pressures. As a consequence, the council's Director of Finance made a written statement to the Corporate Scrutiny Committee on the 9th of January 24 that due to the significant increase in costs of social care, as well as inflation more generally, the council saving requirements will need to rise to a minimum of 3 million in 2024 to 25. Given the scale of the unplanned and unfunded and unavoidable cost pressures, the council's overall medium-term budget deficit will inevitably also increase. Whilst the administration would dearly wish to increase the support available through the local council tax support scheme, this will be at the expense of services that islanders rely on day to day, most of which are services to vulnerable adults and children. In this context, the Cabinet are recommending that the existing scheme remains intact so that the further cuts of £360,500 to essential council services can be avoided. We will, however, ensure that an adequate exceptional hardship scheme remains intact to support the most financially vulnerable. I'm going to leave it at that. That has come through from our finance people, recognising that over the past few months, we've once again hit some unavoidable financial pressures. We're still waiting for more settlement from central government, and let's hope it arrives in support of those in need on the island and indeed nationally. But at this moment in time, those are still being lobbied for through the LGA and other authorities. What I would say is that once again, we sold ourselves short, members, just a little bit, because with a little bit of dialogue, we could have come through this in much better state. You totally agree with me, Claire, and I thank you for that. Oh well, okay. Look,
Are we moving on to the vote?
Claire.
Can I request a name vote, please, Chair, on the 75%?
Can I complete?
You can continue, Ian.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor Jarman. What I'm going to say is our residents, our staff need to be respected a little bit more than bringing forward an unwritten amendment. Amendments should be written so that they're out there, that people can read them and understand what they're going to vote for. At this moment in time, we've got 2 or 3 things that could be anomalies floating around. What I would say is amendments should be written and passed to each member and to staff and to the media. The other thing that I would say is that let's work together on trying to take these things forward. And I won't be voting for the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to move to the vote on the amendment of that motion. So I believe that Councillor Jarman has requested a named vote. I need 4 members to agree to a named vote. There's plenty of hands up there. So we have the 4 people, so it will be a named vote. It's ready? Okay. We need to read the amendment again. Has anybody got that written in full that could read it, please? Councillor Jarman, could you read the amendment?
You have to bear with me a sec when I go back to the page. Page 20, isn't it? So when we're ready.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman.
The amendment is that full council adopts the proposed scheme and changes the maximum level of support for working age cases to 75%, allowing for minor changes to applicable amounts, and that full council discontinues the current exceptional hardship policy.
Okay, we are going to the vote. Mr Thorne will call out your names. All agreed, that was the proposal. Mr Thorne, if you could call out people's names and if you could say whether you are for or against that amendment.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Andre,
Against.
Councillor Bacon,
Against?
Councillor Daw,
Against.
Councillor Downer, Councillor Fuller,
Against?
Councillor Jones Evans, Councillor Lever,
Against.
Councillor Lucioni,
Against.
Councillor PC Wilcox, Councillor Stevens,
Against?
Councillor Garrett,
For?
Councillor Lilly, Councillor Sarah Redrup, Councillor Stewart,
For.
Councillor Quigley,
Against.
Councillor Beston. For. Councillor Blake,
For?
Councillor Brading,
For?
Councillor Churchman,
For.
Councillor Drew. For. Councillor Ellis,
For.
Councillor Hendry,
For?
Councillor Mosdale,
For.
Councillor Nicholson. For. Councillor Oliver. For. Councillor Outlaw, Councillor Price. For. Councillor Quirk.
For?
Councillor Robertson. For. Councillor Ward. For. Councillor Brodie.
Against?
Councillor Adams. Councillor Jarman.
For?
Councillor Medland. For. Councillor Spink. For. Councillor Jordan.
Against?
Councillor Love.
Against.
Councillor Christensen.
Against. Wait for the results. That is 22 for and 15 against, so that motion is carried. The amendment to that motion is carried. Does anybody want to speak on that amendment that is now the substantive motion? Before we go to the vote on that. Councillor Garrett.
Members will have seen me pause because I made my vote with a very heavy heart, but I need to be consistent with the position I've taken for years. It'd be my intention to bring an amendment to the budget in some way or other to restore a hardship fund at an appropriate time. That will probably be will obviously have to be the budget time. Voting in favour of the 75%. I do not believe we should discontinue the hardship fund. If there is some method by tonight where we can restore that, but it is better that we go to 75% and then establish a hardship fund through the budget process to correct that part of things. I'm sure that can be done.
Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. And Councillor Garrett, I know, if you say the term's exceptional hardship, then, none of us want to do that. But actually we were asked where we could find the money from. And I know from having been a member of cabinet and seeing how hard it was for people to claim from that fund, that actually I didn't find it hard to agree to that. I think the figures that have been banned, and what concerned me this evening is nobody's got their finger on the pulse. You know, if you asked me right now how much my business has turned over and how much the cost of cable is, I could tell you right this second. This has come to this meeting and I don't know exactly how much the exceptional hardship is, how much has been spent, but what I can tell you is 100% that it has been really hard for that fund to be used, and actually a very small proportion of it has been used. So that's the data that we do want. I will absolutely back you if you bring a budget proposal to bring the exceptional hardship fund back, as long as it is shown that that fund is actually easy for people to access, because actually you are talking the most vulnerable in society who find it hard to access that type of information, even whether they've got the internet to be able to fill it in. Is it, I want more detail, because something is happening with that hardship fund for it not to be used in these times as much as it should be. So I had to vote with 75. I had to be consistent like yourself. I do think we need to delve into it deeper. But when I've got the table and I'm looking at stuff going out that we've got a new logo that will be put out on every type of van on top of headed paper and stuff like that, and then we're discussing whether we can't increase up to 75%, you know, that worries me, because you know yourself, just producing a logo wasn't some 6-year-old doing it on the back of a fag packet. I know probably the wrong analogy with 6 and fag packets, but you know, I do it to make Councillor Dorr laugh. We do need to, you know, there is money being spent in this council that is not right, and it needs, we all need to make a stand to make sure it goes in the right direction.
Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I wasn't going to speak on this, but I think the you know, the little recess we've just had, I thought actually, and I don't want to criticise anyone, it's not my style, but the I would have expected after this recess for us to have had some detail of how much of an uptake there was on the exceptional hardship fund. I actually voted for the 75% previously, because I know that vulnerable residents find it really, really hard to access the exceptional hardship fund. So understanding what the uptake of that would be would have answered Councillor Lever's question, for instance. That's something I'm sure we can get information back on at a later date, and we can probably reintroduce that fund. But to bring it back up to 75% is a no-brainer for me, and I'm happy to have supported it. Thank you.
Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. Budget setting is all about political priorities. Sorry, Carl, I know you don't like that word, but we're all politicians. It's all about priorities. And frankly, I could find the money for this other than getting rid of the exceptional hardship policy if I apply my political principles towards it. For instance, you know, investing in car parks around the country, etc., is not a priority for me. That money could be used in an alternative method as far as I'm concerned. So it's about priorities. You can do this if you really want. I voted against this because Carl Love raised something that actually concerned me about the exceptional hardship policy. I want more information. What worries me, though, is what Councillor Garrett just said, that we have just agreed a policy which is now policy of this council. And he's going to bring an amendment, even though he voted against it, to reinstate that, which he can only do with the support of, I can't remember the exact number, Justin might be able to tell me, only has the support of I think it's 10 members of the council to change policy within 6 months or something like that. I may be wrong, Justin, you can look it up, but you can't do that, Andrew. You've now voted for something that this council now has to operate. And I don't think you understood that. And I'm sorry, Andrew, that was just posturing. At least I reviewed my position. I would like to vote for 75%. I know Richard Quigley, you know, we have very similar politics, although, you know, he's in a party and I'm not. You know, we have different, you know, but he would like 100%. You know, I would love to have 100%. I could do it if I was leading this council. I've said that for 19 years. Give me the leadership and I'll sort this island out. But it's never going to happen. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind members of the Nolan principles. And one of them is about objectivity. And within that, it talks about using the best evidence. We haven't had the best evidence this evening to make this change, which is why I thought Councillor Mosdell's amendment or recommendation was the most sensible one, because with some time to reflect on what this would actually mean to our current and forthcoming budget and to the hardship fund itself, it's absolutely critical. You can't make policy which involves hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds and people's lives just on the hoof and also expect to get it all sorted out within 5 minutes during a adjournment. It's just not the way to behave. So, you know, I'm quite shocked that we're in this situation now with no evidence to back it up. I just don't know where we're going to get the extra funding from. Of course, you know, if we're charged by it and legally bound to do it, we will find something. There's something else going to have to give that I'm sure other members in this chamber won't like. We certainly won't like it. We don't like the situation we're in. Don't like the situation, the fact we're not being properly funded by this government. We don't like the fact we've had £92 million stripped out of our core budget for the last 13 years. We also don't like the fact that we've had trusts come and wreck our economy, and all the costs are going up for everybody, including here. We've got higher wages to pay, high utility bills to pay. Everything is going up, and our core spending is going down. Can please just be responsible in this chamber and look at the realities of the situation we're dealing with and stop showing off.
I have quite a few more people on my list to speak, but I'm also aware of the time and the amount of the other items we've got on our agenda as well. And that once again, we've had something that's taken over an hour that could have been spoken about by both parties or all people beforehand to come to a bit more of a solution. So I will continue to take people's comments, but we have got other things on the agenda as well. I've got Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly support what Councillor Brodie has just said. In making this policy now, and between now and implementing some kind of new system, we have thrown some of our poorest people off the cliff right now. We've thrown them off the cliff. There is no backstop there that exists now for anybody who needs that hardship at this moment in time. There's no provision because of the comments which have just been made. That was the comment that I made to start with about what we were doing. It doesn't matter if it's one person, your family member, somebody else's family member, they have been chucked off the cliff by us because there's no provision, because you did not take notice about what actually Councillor Mosdale said to start with about bringing it back. That's what we've done for 6 months. So, you know, perhaps some of you councillors who voted for that will put your hand in your pocket, because what will it cost for, let's just say, 4 people who have now fallen off the cliff, okay? They lose their homes. That's going to cost a lot more than £45,000, I'll tell you, of hardship fund to get them back into support, if that's what happens and they lose their homes because there is no hardship to keep the roof over their head. That is the reality of what we've just done.
Councillor Robertson.
I entirely agree with Councillor Garrett. This was about the 75%, and the Cabinet can go and find a way of compensating for any loss for the hardship fund. If it's 45,000, that is money that Councillor Stevens can find. I believe in you, Councillor Stevens, and if you can't find it to compensate, then I'll support Councillor Garrett's amendment at the budget in order to achieve it. Very easy to deliver. It's not a policy issue, it's a money issue.
Councillor Stewart.
I'm sorry for taking up time. Most of you, thank you for that. But I have to say that I hate the idea that my friend and fellow councillor Garrett is being told that he's posturing for 75%. It won't happen immediately. There's no disappearance of a fund tomorrow. We have a way through, and we have to make the point to the whole council, as a council, that we wanted that 75%. We have been consistent about that, and I think we should stay with that.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. Very brief.
who, if it was really possible, would not want 75% or a higher figure of support? But heads and hearts have been talked about. My head tells me this will create a hole in the budget. The figures have been bandied around. There is a hole. It will be somewhere between 150 and 300,000 on the figures we've heard. That's the first thing that's being voted for. And secondly, my heart tells me there should be some sort of exceptional circumstances available, exceptional relief available. That was introduced at the point when the relief went down from 100%, not at the point of 80, 75, 70 or whatever. As soon as we went out 100%, that was deemed to be necessary. I cannot vote with my head to create that hole in the budget, nor with my heart to create that gap in the system that will plainly exist.
That's all the names I have to speak on that. So we can go forward to the motion now after the amendment has been agreed. So that becomes the substantive motion and we can vote on that. So are you happy to go to that vote now? So all those in favour for that motion? You're voting on, because we voted on the amendment to the motion. And so that motion has, that now becomes the substantive motion on the table. So that is the added 75%. Yes, same as last time, basically. Yes. Yes. Yes, but you have to now vote on that because the motion had to be added. I know. There's So all those in favour, please raise your hands. Those for that motion. And those against, please raise your hands. And anyone against? Abstention, sorry. Any abstentions? I'm going to abstain. Actually, that's me. Thank you. Okay, so that has now been, motion has been passed after all that. With that amendment agreed. So that now takes us, is that a point of order? Chair?
Yeah,
Councillor Brodie.
can I just ask for confirmation from the Deputy Monitoring Officer as to what I said earlier, that is now policy and can only be changed if you abide by the requirements, which I'm sure you can tell me now, of doing that within a certain period of time. Sorry.
Chairman, I'd rather slightly sidestep the first part of that question because I'd want to think about that a bit longer in terms of if it were a decision of the council that you're seeking to rescind, and you cannot do so within 6 months unless 1/3 of the membership sign a motion to that effect.
Okay, thank you. So that we can move on to item 8, which is the report of the Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Education and Corporate Functions, the review of polling places and districts. So over to Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think this is going to live up to the last debate. I hope this is not going to live up to the last debate. This is very much standard business for the council. There has to be a review of polling places every 5 years, as paragraph 3.2 of the report notes. The last statutory review was in October 2018. A review has been undertaken now. You'll see from pages 202 to 203, 3 issues came to be considered. Sorry, 204 to 205. No, I've got my numbers wrong all over the place. 26 to 27. There was an issue about Ventnor West, but the proposal, which came from one source, suggested creating a new polling station, but it would be only 345 yards from another. So that was deemed not a sufficiently powerful argument. An argument in Knighton
and co, which would actually only have benefited 4 electors. So those 2 are not recommended, but there's a recommendation in respect of Ryde West to merge 2 polling districts and create a new polling station at Ryde Family Centre. And it is recommended that that is accorded with. And as such, the recommendation in the paper is that the council adopts the scheme of polling districts and polling places as set out in the appendix to the report, the resolution to be effective for the purposes of proceedings preliminary or relating to any election to be held on or after 1st of February 2024, as we know there's probably going to be at least a few coming up. So that's my recommendation, and I look for a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Okay, are we all happy to, did you want to speak on that, Councillor Stevens, or can we go to the vote on that?
Go to the vote.
Go to the vote. All those in favour of that paper, that report, that looks like it's unanimous. I'll just double check. There's nobody against. No, okay, that one's carried. Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 9, which is the report of the Cabinet Member for Regulatory Services, Community Protection, ICT, the approval of the Statement of Licensing Policy. Is that Councillor Stevens again? No, oh, sorry, Councillor Lucioni. Sorry.
It's my first one.
over to you.
Council. Don't steal my thunder here, you know. Okay.
Yep, go ahead. Thank
Chair.
you.
So this is the statement of the licence policy for 2024 to 29. Under the Licensing Act, the authority is required to every 5 years to determine its policy in respect to the exercise of its licensing functions. The last policy ran from 2019 to 2024. So for some of us, it was before we were elected. So hopefully everybody's read it. There's been consultation with the normal bodies. So Member of Parliament, Isle of Wight councillors, town and parishes, etc. The consultation, there were 6 responses that were received. 3 comments are received on online survey during the consultation period, all of which have been responded to and brought no required changes. There was a response from Northwood Parish Council, which I thank them for, and they brought up the equal opportunities between people from different protected characteristics, so from different groups. The evaluation was done by the licensing committee or the sub-licensing committee, and you can see on number 32 the changes that were made to the policy. So things like packaging and wrappers made from biodegradable and recyclable materials, and that the DPPO link has been updated, so that's now the DPPO, as we know, the designated protected areas. I'll look for a seconder. Oh, sorry, the recommendation. So option 1, that full council adopts and revise statement of licensing policy for 2024 to 2029. And I'll look for a seconder. Thank you.
Councillor Beston, thank you. Would you like to speak on that, or should we go to the vote on that?
Just very quickly, I think
Yeah.
the Cabinet Member has covered the points succinctly. All the detail is covered within the paper that members would have read. The details of the survey are contained within there, and any comments, I hope members can get behind the paper and vote.
Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I've ever spoken on licensing in all my years, and I'm not planning on speaking on it again. But I won't be voting for this document. I'll just abstain because it became apparent to me fairly recently how opaque the licensing system is. There was an application on the edge of my ward, just off Cottons Bridge, a nightclub recently, that had some objections to it. The ability of those residents for their councillor to represent them, for them to articulate their views in a public domain is always denied. And it has never been, I mean, people with more central wards than mine will know far more about this than I do. But I just felt that this is not what a local authority should be about. It may be because of statutory restrictions on how that's done, but nobody bothered to explain it to me. And I think I just detected an element of I was being an irritation. Now I know I'm an expert at being an irritation in here and elsewhere sometimes, but in that when I'm representing my residents, I expect to be able to be heard and to be heard in public if necessary. And I believe I had a good argument, and it quite annoyed me really. I would say to the cabinet member that to have an experienced member of this council failing like that doesn't send a good message to those residents of mine that wanted me to articulate their views. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward, Councillor Lucioni. I just have one question, and that was on the consultation. So I see that there are only 6 responses, and I was wondering, why do you think the responses were so low, and what could be done in the future to improve that? Thank you.
So Lucioni, do you want to come back on that now?
Yeah, I will get an answer for you on that one, and I think maybe we should work together and have a look at that.
Anyone else want to speak on that, or? No? Councillor Lucioni, did you want to come back on it at all? Oh,
To say to Councillor Brodie, I'll pick that up because that's not good enough.
okay, I think we've all had all the comments and we can go to the vote on that. So those that are for that report, that motion, please raise your hands. I think that's, yep, on those that are against. And any abstentions? Sorry, Jeff seems to.
The more interesting.
Three abstentions. I was just checking. I've given you all the options, so just making sure. Right, thank you. So that is carried. I'm now going on to item 10. I am on the right item, aren't I? Item 10, the report of the monitoring officer. So we have a review of the political proportionality, alternative arrangements and appointments. And I will hand over to Mr. Thorne.
Chairman, thank you. The papers before you is due to the recent by-election and Councillor Blake joining the Conservative Party, and therefore it was considered this was a trigger for this paper. As he joined the Conservative Party, there is actually no change to the allocation of seats or proportionality. I haven't been notified of any changes or nominations to the seats either, and therefore I'm not sure there's much more I can add other than I would be grateful if perhaps you, Chairman, would move the recommendations set out are paragraphs 5 and 6 of the report.
Okay, I propose that the recommendation is that the review of the political proportionality be agreed as set out in Appendix 1 and that the appointments set out in Appendix 2 be agreed. Councillor Stewart?
Apologies for adding anything to it. One of the people on one of the vacancies which is available is on Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration. I wonder if the monitor, which hasn't been filled, I wonder if the monitoring officer could inform us how that might be filled if that particular set of people fail to put anybody forward. Sorry, page 262 is the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regeneration. But it's a general question.
Councillor Brodie? Mr. Thorne first.
Just very quickly, could you get a seconder before?
Could I have a seconder for the paper? Thank you, Councillor Quirk.
I don't know why I just reminded that, Chairman, because I'm not sure I've got the complete answer before me, because there is a statutory mechanism by which, if it remains vacant, that notice can be given that if it isn't filled, that it be brought back to full council for it to be nominated to. But I don't have that before me. But perhaps I could provide a reply outside of the meeting.
That would be fine. Thank you very much.
Councillor Brodie?
Well, I entirely welcome what Mr. Thorne has just said, but it has always been very clear for the last 2.5 years that that isn't possible, that places are allocated to groups or unaligned members, and that's it, you're stuck with it. And if you don't fill it, and neither Councillor Quigley or I, unsurprisingly, in the case of licensing, interested in doing it, and I wouldn't engage with scrutiny on a council ever again, because it's a waste of time. Councillor Quigley can speak for himself on that. So you're always going to have those vacant. Councillor Potter always said, even though I've argued, sorry, Mr. Potter always said, I've argued this with him, said, well, that's just the way it'll be. What you've just said, Mr. Thorne, is precisely what the previous monitoring officers always used to say. But thank you.
Chairman, without wishing to brush back on anything I've said, I didn't want to commit myself to it. I can absolutely state that full council approve the recommendations of the group leaders. They have no alternative. The group leader makes a nomination, there is no option. What happens when that vacancy remains vacant for a long period of time? I would have to go back to the regs to check.
But I believe Councillor Brodie's right. We have had several instances of this, and it's been brought up before that we cannot fill that position. So the motion we have on the table now with this report, could we go to the vote on that? And all those in favour of that report, raise your hands. Thank you. All those against? No, I'm for it. Thank you. Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you. And on to item 11, we've got the motions submitted, and we have the first one by Councillor Lucioni.
I won't take much of your time up.
Sorry, Councillor Love's just leaving the room. Please continue.
I won't take much of your time up because I'm sure everybody's read the motion, but it's about abuse of elected members. It's unacceptable. So I know some people don't have much to do with the LGA, but it's the only way of surveying councillors. So the last survey they did, it was 7 out of 10 councillors that said they had been abused or intimidated at some point. And that's just not acceptable. And let me say that I can only do a motion that affects the council, but as I've seen in shops and stuff, people are wearing cameras now because it's become normalised, I think, and that's what's really about this. It's putting people off standing. So I actually do some work as being a councillor nationally, and what candidates say to me is that the only thing they're worried about is the abuse and intimidation. That's the only thing they're worried about when they're standing. So for me, that's really, really important that we make a stand and say that it's not acceptable. And just because we're in politics, it doesn't mean that we should put up with intimidation and abuse. I'm not talking about scrutiny. I'm not talking about us saying why we've done something. That's completely different. But let's have a debate and just not have the words. And I know some people on social media, that's hard because they hide behind things. But let's just say it's not right. But I also want to talk about our staff who actually get similar. I haven't got any figures on staff that is affected, but I do hear stories of terrible things that I've said to staff, and that is just not acceptable. So I hope that you'll all support my motion. And the resolution is this council agrees to sign up to the Local Government Association's Debate Not Hate campaign. The campaign aims to raise public awareness on the role of councillors in local communities, encourage healthy debate and improve the response to and support those in public life facing abuse and intimidation. And I look for a seconder. Thank you very much.
A seconder, Councillor Jordan, thank you. Councillor Moster.
Thank you. And we all will sign up to this, of course we will. But let's just hope it's not a load of fluff and flannel. We can all agree to this motion. We can all put our hands up to it. You know, I've been subject to, everyone sees the emails I get on a regular basis. It's made to the point that actually life becomes quite difficult when you're having that regular abuse and you're subject to it. And abuse can be from emails, from people WhatsApping you. And when you do report it to the monitoring officer, I can honestly say there is no support. It is something that you are told to expect because you are a county councillor. It doesn't make if it makes you ill or if it intrudes in your personal life. You are getting it just because you are a councillor. We can all sign up to this, but what are we going to do to change it? What are we going to do to stop it? You know, I know councillors within this chamber who have had stuff from other councillors. You know, it seems acceptable, but it isn't. You know, so I'm quite happy to sign up to this. But at some point, we need to have something, you know, in the good old days, they'd have a standards board, wouldn't they? Everybody would be dragged above the standards board and everybody would be afraid of the standards board because there would be something that would happen to you afterwards, you know. Now you can be pulled in front of the standards board and actually nothing happens. There is no result from it. There is no punishment for behaviour. So yeah, I completely agree with this, but what I want to see is what can be done when there are people who become vexatious. Because it could be any of you. You know, it could be any of you that happens. It could be any of you, this council that falls out with another councillor, you know, that actually makes you not want to walk into this council chamber and people don't know what's going on and what affects you going into meetings. So yeah, I get it. I completely get it. But it does feel a bit of fluff and flannel. I want to know eventually what will be done to protect us, because people won't stand and do this. You know, you do get a lot of abuse outside of the council, but there isn't enough protection for councillors to want to sign up to do this. And I'm going to put it in. It is really hard for women to do this as well. You know, I'm not usually the one that goes, you know, I'm a woman, you know, but actually it is really, really difficult. We don't have enough women in this chamber, you know, for lots of different reasons, but this is definitely one of the reasons that people don't sign up to be a councillor. And I like democracy, you know, I do like the debate, you know it, you see it coming from me, you know, it's, yeah, I'd also like to be completely in charge, but you know, I can't do that, but hey ho. But I would like this to have some substance, and if we sign up to it, there is something that protects councillors, protects staff, and protects all of us, to make sure that, you know, it doesn't just, we leave out the council chamber and we all forget about it.
Councillor Jarman?
Sorry, just checking it wasn't a fire alarm. I actually put my hand up because I'd agreed with Councillor Lucioni to second this beforehand, but given that other people jumped in, I think it just showed the overwhelming desire from, sorry, Chair, of the chambers to support it. It is important, though, at the end of the day, we have robust processes. And I would echo the comment that's been made that where we have had issues raised with the monitoring officer to date, they have not been dealt with in the way that most people would have expected them to dealt with. Now, that's up to the monitoring officer. It is within his discretion to do that. So we are encouraged not to challenge it. What I would say is that, and I'm confused in a way why Councillor Love left the chamber. Perhaps it's because he has an ongoing issue. In my case, it happened before I became a councillor, and the police were involved, and the electoral committee representative and others, where there were problems within my ward. So it is something that could occur to any of us at any time. And I think one of the comments that was made by Councillor Lucioni in her paper was to promote the role of councillors. I think that has a number of benefits. One is to explain to people exactly what it is we do, and that we do offer some value. The other one is to communicate how they can be in contact with their councillor. And that's something that I think is perhaps not as widespread across the island as it should be with everybody. And the third thing is to make sure that people know not only who their local ward councillor is, but where they can go within their ward to get assistance from them whenever they hold a ward surgery. which is also not I know on the island, a terribly common practice. So I think communicating, being visible to the community, explaining what we do to the community, and dealing very thoroughly with abuse when it does occur are all important criteria. So I will be supporting this wholeheartedly.
Thank you. I've got quite a few on the list to talk, but I would like to get on to the next motion if possible. So if we could keep it as quick as we can, but I know that we do need to have comments on this. I've got Councillor Jones-Evans next.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's great that we're having some more diversity back in the chamber, especially with the arrival of Councillor Redrup. I was very pleased, and we used to have a few more women in the chamber. Not so much now, but I think getting to that 50-50 situation would be fantastic. And for me, my personal time being a councillor for about 15 years now, the issue I've had hasn't been from members of the public. There's been no hate coming from there, but there's certainly been a lot of abuse coming from fellow councillors. And for me, I find that the most disappointing element of all, because we've all been elected here, or whichever forum we're at, we're all there to represent our communities. And no matter what we think of each other as people, we're there as representatives for our communities and have a right to speak. But when I've had to, be made to sit there for 40 minutes until I behave myself, for instance, I've been shouted out for being the most useless chair that they've ever seen. Things like that aren't great, and they also do not encourage other people to stand for council or to speak up when you're going to be faced with that kind of vitriol. So, Councillor Lucioni, I'm 100% behind this. And I just think it's worthwhile members reflecting. It's not just about what comes from the outside, it's about what we do on the inside to each other. Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think we've all been a victim of something like this. I understand that often when particularly a resident that's not happy with something maybe gets to us, and we're the first person that's actually listened to them. And often they do want to vent, and I let them vent, and I'll do anything I can to help. And sometimes it is about listening, but often, councillors get the abuse because they're the only person that will listen to a resident, and that can be about a completely non-council related issue, of course, which is often what most of us get involved in. But I've seen some atrocious behaviour in this chamber. I've seen some of the worst behaviour I've ever seen. Some of it's inexcusable, what I've seen. And I think, I don't behave like that, so I don't know why anyone else has to behave like that. I'm a grown up. And at one point I was the youngest person in this chamber. I still knew how to act and how to behave myself. The worst behaviour of the lot that I've seen is how some councillors have spoken to staff here. And those members of staff, there may be procedures they've got to protect them, but what they can't do is answer back. And they've been spoken to in public meetings in a disgraceful manner, and they can't answer back. And in any other walk of life, they would be answered back to. So councillors, anyone that does think it's right to talk down to members of staff in the public arena, you really ought to look at your behaviour. Thank you.
Councillor Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep this very, very quick. I just wanted to add on to this discussion that we mustn't also forget town and parish councillors as well. They do their role really well and unpaid, it's voluntary, and they can often receive abuse as well. Thank you.
Councillor Churchman.
Sorry, yes, very quickly. I think social media has a lot to play in this. People have forgotten their manners. I say to people, if you can't say it to somebody's face, don't put it in print. I would also make a suggestion to any lady councillor. If I'm going to visit a constituent and I think it's going to be difficult, I always have somebody with me. I never go visiting on my own if I feel that I could be in a situation which could be compromising. So that would be my advice, Sarah, for you and believe you me, women can be as bad as men talking to you. If you have somebody with you, you always have a witness, and it makes the other people think twice just about what they will say and do. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Lucioni for bringing this, for highlighting these issues. I agree with Councillor Mosdell that it's all very well, we bring this forward, we talk about it. If we're not going to change, then this doesn't mean anything. For me, it's all about respect. It's about respect for each other. And I'm really, really glad that it actually does mention our staff in here. And I'm very disappointed that Councillor Jarman has already made an adverse comment. I have always found our monitoring officer extremely helpful. So already we are saying that we have to practice what we preach. We have to show respect for each other. Thank you.
Councillor Dorr.
Thank you, Chair. Raising public awareness of the role of councillors in local communities, that's a key sentence in this for me. I've had no problem in the chamber, as I was saying to Jeff the other day. I enjoy a little bit of robust discussion. We always shake hands and we walk out, and that's the business of council. But during the flooding process in Binstead, there was a lot of drama coming my way. And okay, one regards oneself as a punch bag to a degree, and in the way that Matthew has explained, you just need to listen, and people want to vent. But sometimes we have people with us that aren't exposed to that. They're not ready for it. I mean, 34 years ago to the day, actually, at 2 o'clock in the morning, it all kicked off in the Gulf War, and I sat there with my respirator on thinking, that's very loud and very bright. I'm a reasonably robust and thick-skinned individual, or thick. That's for you, Claire. But we've got Keith up here from Southern Water. He got a lot of flack in Binstead. It's not his fault. All the agencies are struggling too. So it does really impact the staff and the support agencies that we've got working with us. And the raising the awareness of the councillor's role, I think, would play an integral part in this. And I really would like to see some stuff disseminated, because, like I say, I'm quite happy to have those conversations with members of the public. That's what you're there for, to manage expectations and explain how the system works, or somehow doesn't, but what other agencies' roles are, and how, frankly, slow things are because of legislation, because of budget constraints and various bits and bobs. And I've always found that once you can get that out in the open, it seems to calm things down and everything seems to work. So thank you, Karen, for bringing this forward. And I hope everyone will support it. And yeah, a bit of a campaign to raise awareness. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brading.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is a really good motion. It's something I will definitely support. I'm grateful it's been brought forward. I hope it's in lip service to the whole thing. It's easy to bring a motion forward in lip service. When I listened to Councillor Price, Councillor Jones-Evans saying about, things they've experienced in this chamber, they've been here longer than I have, respect and abuse. Yes, it does happen in the chamber, because we all get passionate about things. We all think we're doing the right thing, but we have to start respecting here, support each other and the public regarding political, we're all here to serve the island. And I think it's an interpretation of what is abuse. Some people think abuse is one thing. Some people are thick skinned and just get on with it. But what is abuse? I use an example. I didn't want to do this. I use an example. We're having a grown-up debate here about abuse for a great motion. Councillor Andre then named Councillor Jarman in that debate. Now, I thought that was inappropriate, to be honest. And that could be an example to some people, but it didn't need to happen. So we need to be respectful in this chamber of what we're doing, and then support each other outside of this chamber. And I hope this motion isn't lip service, and I will fully support it, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hopefully we can all think twice about everything that is mentioned. We can move to the vote on this. Oh, you would like to reply, Karen? Yep.
I am going to send out the criteria of abuse and intimidation. It's quite interesting. Actually, somebody following you up the road is classed as intimidation. Okay, so there's lots of things in there. There's the things you would you would think of, and there is other things that you not necessarily think of, and actually spreading misinformation is one of them.
Thank you, Karen. All those in favour of this motion, please raise your hands. And then those that are against, and any abstentions. No, that motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor
everybody.
Lucioni.
Thank you.
And then on to the second motion, which is Councillor Lilly's motion with sewage. And I feel like we're not going to give it justice because we've only got 7 minutes left on the clock, but at least we've got to it. So over to you, Councillor Lilly, but keep it short, I think, because you've written a lot there. And if we want some debate on it.
I think we
Oh,
should go.
Carl's going to come back in.
I'm just saying, do we only have 7 minutes for this motion then?
We've been having so much fun that the time has sped by and we have 7
Can I
minutes before the end of
suggest-
the meeting.
Can I make a suggestion that we go straight to the vote on it? People have got clearly the motion in front of it to actually do. Because actually, I think it's unfair to push it back because it's actually a very, very important issue. At least if people support it, then we actually give a message. And I just feel for surfers against sewage who've done all the work, and you've also got Southern Water here to actually in this, it will just be sad to actually push it back.
I believe there are some people that would like to comment. So, I mean, we have time for a few comments and then we could go to the vote. So, Councillor Mosdale.
Sorry, I agree, Councillor Lilly, but it's a really important motion. And I know that a lot of my group, we've in our pre-meeting spoke very strongly on this. I suggest that it be moved to the next because it does need a proper debate. It's not something you can, there is stuff that the council does, there's strong feelings on it. I'm not saying that the motion would fall, but actually I think the debate needs to be heard properly, and it's not fair to give this, what it is an important motion, just 6 minutes of debate.
Sorry?
Councillor Brodie.
Sorry to be. Can I have a seconder for the motion?
Not letting it be seconded at the moment because we may
Chair,
have a process to
Chair,
go through.
Can I
Councillor Brodie.
just, you need to clarify with the Morrinovers, but I don't think you can defer motions to a future count. Soon as it's seconded, it's going to be out.
I'm not letting it be seconded at this point so that it could be deferred. Has not been seconded, this motion at this point.
Evan, yes, agree. Don't put the motion and have it seconded. Otherwise, you can't defer it. The suggestion is don't put the motion and put it in on the next agenda. If we'd have run out of time and hadn't got to it, at the chairman's discretion, it would be referred either to an extraordinary or the next ordinary meeting. The moment you put it and run out of time, the guillotine will come down.
Thank you. But this is a quite a big topic, and I don't think it would do it justice to debate it at this stage. So we could put it onto the next agenda. It has had exposure today, and I think it's really important that we've seen that everybody's passionate about this for different reasons, and it does need to be spoken about. So I'm just going to check procedure again.
It's down to Councillor Lilly as to whether he wishes to put it.
It's your choice, Councillor Lilly, whether to put it forward and have it seconded and only have 4 minutes to debate it, and we wouldn't get to a vote, so it wouldn't go automatically to the next agenda.
Let's go to a vote, Shane.
I don't think we can go to the vote in that time.
Put it to the next meeting. And we will withdraw it to put to the next meeting. I just feel it very, very sad that this issue, which is really affecting people's lives, hasn't had the time forward. And I would also like to actually say I put forward my motion exactly at the time, the first one. So I was surprised that actually the other motion was in front of it, although it's an important motion.
Councillor Quigley?
Yeah, I mean, talk of motions is quite unfortunate given the topic. but I do think it is a very, very important issue. What I would urge is that when it comes back, if it is allowed, that there is, without any of us having to offer an amendment, is that it actually has something meaningful in it. Because actually what we want to see is actual, I don't think there's a person in this room that hasn't engaged. I speak regularly to the Chief Customer Officer, Katie, and in a very friendly way, but about how I can no longer swim in the sea, is that there's no one in this room that doesn't, the opposite question would be, do any of us vote to put extra sewage into our sea? No would be the answer. So this needs to come back and be meaningful, because everybody's going to agree, but there is very little, as I understand it, that the council can do. So it needs to come back with actions. Otherwise, all we're doing is poor Shani is working socks off, and we're giving false hope. And I find that a very strange and odd thing to do when we should be about action in this chamber.
Okay, seeing as we're not putting it forward.
Can I actually say that the wording is very much from the surface against sewage of that, and that they have got, and we have got working, but I do think we need to debate it with it. But I am disappointed that we haven't actually had the time.
We haven't got the time for it, so we can't debate it. Otherwise, I'll be opening it up. We haven't had it seconded. It's going to go forward to a future meeting. So we'll move on from that motion at this point. And I apologise to the people that have been here sitting through it and have not had the time to listen to us debate it on this day. But it is a big subject we want to bring back for another time. I would say that we're going to move on to members' questions, but I'm trying to go really slow, so no, I'm not. It's item 12, best of members' questions, but I think we've only got about 30 seconds. So we will publish the written response to Councillor Lilly's question. Councillor Mosdale, really quick.
Really quick question. Councillor Blake, it was his first question he ever asked. I think the point he wanted to get is that Ventnor at the moment only has one route in. If you lived in a town where your town was dying because all the routes going in apart from one, if you go into Ventnor at the moment, it's like a ghost town. What are the Cabinet and this council going to do to help Ventnor? That's the quick question. People need to realise that it is like a ghost town there.
Thank you very much, everybody. That is the end of the meeting. It's 9 o'clock. Please drive safely as you go home. It is very icy and cold out. Good evening.